Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Talk of the Town podcast. If you have not already, make sure to hit that subscribe button, as we're now on the road to 500 subscribers here on the YouTube channel. If you love sports content, sports talk, anything from sports betting to updated rankings every week, it's all right here on the Talk of the Town podcast. And here today, we're going to be reacting to some of the best games from Week 12, Colts-Chiefs, Vikings-Packers, Steelers-Bears, Eagles-Cowboys, and a lot more, so make sure to stay tuned for that. And yeah, man, let's get right into it here today, starting with the Colts and Chiefs. 20-23 in overtime. The Chiefs end up saving their season and potentially even the dynasty. And I thought this game was a pretty important game for both sides. Obviously, I just mentioned the Chiefs saving their season, and the Colts, a chance for them to take that next step in their division in the AFC South, especially with now the Jags only a game behind. The Texans are getting hot. They're getting C.J. Stroud back, and I think the Colts still have to play them 2 more times each. I don't know if they played the Jags yet, but I know they had to play Houston twice, and they might actually have to play Jacksonville twice. So, you know, they've been in the driver's seat all year long, but it feels like now they're starting to become some pressure on the Colts, and they have not been in that position this year. And I've been getting some backlash on this, but there's only 2 ways the Colts win. And that's either just by beating the piss out of teams. They're up at halftime by 21, 24, however many points, or by at least like 3 scores or so against just not very good teams. And the other reason is Jonathan Taylor playing like an MVP, not human. They rely a lot on Jonathan Taylor, and that's what I think this team has become. It's become a very Jonathan Taylor reliant team. And when the pressure's on Daniel Jones, when they have to rely on him, the pressure gets put on him a little bit. He doesn't really perform. Now, I think we can all agree that Daniel Jones is definitely better than he was in New York, but there's a ceiling with him. There is limitations with him as your quarterback. And this team is still most likely going to make the playoffs. Now, whether or not they go to win the number 1 seed, I know it's up for debate. Now they're 2 games behind the Patriots. Patriots first team to 10 wins yesterday with their win against the Bengals. They're now 2 games behind. A game behind the Broncos still, even with the Broncos on a bye, so they have some rest going into their next game, and they showed no signs of slowing down. So, yeah, the Colts, again, if they manage to get to the playoffs, especially in these close contested games with good opponents, Pittsburgh a few weeks ago, T.J. Watt and that defense put a serious amount of pressure on him. Look, Pittsburgh ended up getting up, by halftime. If it wasn't in their control at the beginning, it looked like Indy was going to kind of, take that thing and run away with it at first. But Pittsburgh, what they usually do is that they can turn it around quickly with a T.J. Watt strip sack. They forced, I think, 5 turnovers on Daniel Jones alone. And yesterday, or against Atlanta a few weeks ago, I think they were in Berlin. I know it was a international game, but they forced a lot of fumbles on Daniel Jones. Now, it wasn't necessarily seen as much as an issue because the Colts ended up recovering those fumbles and they still won. But Jonathan Taylor had one of the best games of his career against Atlanta in that game. And, if they make Jonathan Taylor just look human, pedestrian, it doesn't necessarily mean he's playing bad, but, constantly not breaking off 20, 30, 40, 50-yard runs at a time and, taking on, again, a lot of pressure off Daniel Jones. I worry with this Colts team. I don't trust Daniel Jones getting in shootouts with Josh Allen. Buffalo manages to get to the playoffs, which I'm sure they will. Kansas City, if they manage to get there, you've seen yesterday with Pat Mahomes. Even Pat Mahomes didn't play great, and he hasn't really played great his last couple of games. He's been very up and down this season. That's just kind of been the Chiefs in general. Again, Daniel Jones, he had a 2-score lead on them at one point, kind of in the driver's seat there, and they just collapsed. They can't string drives together. Passes are off. He had a really terrible pass towards the end of the game yesterday into double coverage against the Chiefs, and the 2 defenders ended up colliding and dropping the ball, but that could have been real ugly. You just look, and when the Colts get off of their rhythm, the team just falls apart. They absolutely crumble, and it doesn't just happen slowly. I mean, once they're off beat, that team's off beat, and they find it really hard to get back on track. So, I mean, I thought Shane Steichen, I heard Tony Romo mention it during, I think it was in the 3rd quarter, that he thought Shane Steichen was calling a perfect game plan to that point. But as I mentioned, Steichen can call the best game plan he wants, but when you're going against a good defense and just a good team in general, I don't care that they're only 5-5 or 6-5 right now or whatever they are. They're still a good team. They are. They're not what they used to be. They're older. They're slower. They're just not quite as fast as they used to be. I'm talking about the Chiefs, by the way. They're still a good team regardless, and they still have the best quarterback in football. I know Matt Stafford has 30 touchdowns to 2 picks, but if you had to give me a quarterback to take in the AFC Championship or the end, I don't care, put him on any team on either side, I'm taking Pat Mahomes and a 2-minute drill, whatever it is, every time, at least to this point in the league. There's very few I'd ever even end up taking over him anyway. And yesterday showed, the Colts had a real chance to win that game. And I thought they were going to win that game with, I think it was around 11 minutes left. Kareem Hunt fumbled towards the goal line. Colts ended up recovering. I think it was like a 1 or 2 score lead at that point. It may have been a 2-score lead. I can't exactly remember, but, but I said in my head that whatever the Colts do, if Daniel Jones can go down and drive, they even score a field goal, score a touchdown especially, he would put that game away and really be seen as like, this team is legit. I think, if you heard about Cam Newton and the Patriots over the weekend with the whole Drake May and Cam Newton thing, he called it the Patriots fool's gold. I think the Colts are fool's gold, and I'm guilty of this just as anyone else is. I kind of I was hesitant to go all in on the Colts at first. I was very much so comparing them to the Saints at the beginning of last year with Derek Carr when they had their offense had that historic start. They were like 2-0, and then they ended up losing to Philly, and it all kind of fell apart from there. I kind of thought that's what the Colts would have been this year. And they just kept on winning and winning and winning. And I didn't really take account of their schedule. I was keeping an eye on it, but I'm like, they just look so good regardless. Like, bad teams, the Patriots versus the Bengals yesterday. The Bengals haven't been very good all year. Their defense is kind of stunk, and they've been getting kind of worse, progressively worse every week. And any given Sunday, and I say that about any team, is like, while they're bad teams, they still have elite players. They do. Like, the Titans and the Cardinals technically aren't very good, but any given Sunday, these teams can win games. I'm not saying the Titans really have elite players per se, but these guys are all professional athletes and the best in the world at what they do. They can win at any time, especially if they get a little bit of a spark of momentum. Trust me, I know this from playing sports throughout my life, is like, you can go against a team that's like 0-10, and it's happened to me before. I used to play for the number 1 team in the state of Maryland in baseball, the Gambrels. I live in Maryland. I played there for a couple of years. We're the number 1 team in the state of Maryland for a while, and I forget what team it was, but you could go against just a really shit team that is just no wins, nothing. You're coming in, you feel like you're going to win the game. You look up at the scoreboard, and this team, once a really bad team gets red hot, they're impossible to beat. Basketball, baseball, it doesn't matter. Of course, I never played at the professional level, but regardless of just anywhere in sports, you can play for a top dog and go against a team who's just supposedly just sucks. You let them get a little bit of a spark of momentum or anything, they're literally impossible to beat. So as I mentioned, any given Sunday, the Colts are going out there, beating the crap out of teams. I'm like, yeah, this team looks legit out there. And I put all my chips in on them, and I'm kind of glad I didn't, because, seeing the future with this team so far, I could see my ass being dead broke if I were to do that. But I'm definitely taking a step back from the Colts a little bit. I think they'll make the playoffs, but I think this team is probably going to be one and done. And I think I wouldn't be surprised in a couple of weeks we look up and the Colts, they're tied with Jacksonville, maybe even Houston in this division. They have a tough stretch coming up here. And the momentum is definitely not trending upwards for Indianapolis. I know it's just 1 loss to the Chiefs in a desperate spot, but I could argue the same for the Colts. Like, you look at their division, even with Trevor Lawrence not playing well, Trevor Lawrence is not the reason Jacksonville's winning games. He is not at all. And if he kind of, seems to pick it up, tone down the turnovers a little bit, we could look up in 3 weeks and Jacksonville might be leading the AFC South. And especially with the Ravens on the come up, the Texans, the Bills, it's not looking like they're going to win the AFC East to this moment. It's going to be a big mix in that wild card spot. And a lot of these teams are going to be a lot of good teams. Pittsburgh, Baltimore, whoever it is, Buffalo even, Indy, Jacksonville, Houston. These teams are all fighting to the death for the 7th, 6th, 5th seed. They're all there. They're fighting for that spot, and there's going to be some disappointing teams who don't make the playoffs. And don't be surprised if the Colts are a little bit of a tough stretch if they end up in that spot. But for the Chiefs, look, they needed it. They needed that win, not only for their season, but to also maybe try to hold on to the dynasty. I think that's kind of the least of their worries at the moment. I think they just want to make the playoffs. They haven't been really in this spot at all. In the Patrick Mahomes era, sitting at around 500, kind of in that mix of playoff teams that are like, who's going to make it, who's not. The AFC West is ultra competitive now. The Broncos, no joke. The Chargers, even with their injuries, imagine they weren't injured. They'd be up there with the Broncos. Like, they'd easily have a tack off another win or two, but the Chargers do have a tough stretch coming up on their schedule as well. But the Chiefs just trying to stay alive. They did yesterday. I thought Pat Mahomes hasn't really played particularly well over the last couple of weeks, especially just yesterday afternoon. I didn't think he played great. He had an interception and touchdowns. He didn't have over 300 yards passing, but the whole offense just isn't what it used to be. I mean, I've seen some takes about comparing them to the Patriots dynasty, and they had a while of not winning any Super Bowls or anything. It's like the expectation with the Chiefs is to win the Super Bowl. It's like Super Bowl or nothing with this team. But I think if they can just rattle off and get to the playoffs, I think they can win a game or two. But this is not the same old Chiefs we're used to. I had a take a few weeks ago about how I actually compared this team to the 2014 Patriots, to where they had a really slow start. They actually got demolished by the Chiefs at the beginning of the season, and they were talking about benching Brady. This is the end. Is this team even going to make the playoffs? And I was like, this kind of reminds me of that. Like, obviously they weren't ever talking about benching Mahomes, but it just felt like kind of the beginning of the end for them. And you kind of look up, the Chiefs do have an uphill battle to climb, but, I don't really know. I think I could kind of take back a little bit about the 2014 Pats, but at the same time, I don't, because I think if this team can just get to the playoffs, I think they could make some noise, even though they're slow, they're old, they're not great. They just have guys who know how to play in big spots. They just do. And it showed yesterday to where every moment in the playoffs, you're not going to go in the playoffs. This is what I was kind of mentioning with the Colts as well. It's like, you're not going to be up by 21, going against the Chiefs, the Bills, the Ravens, if they manage to get there. Like, you're just not. So that's why in big spots, close games, I would still take the Chiefs over a lot of teams, even though they just have not been great down the stretch. I still would, but big time win for them yesterday, being able to just win in overtime, shut down the Colts, shut down Jonathan Taylor for an extended period of time, put it on Daniel Jones's shoulders, and they end up winning that game there. So big win there for the Chiefs. Vikings-Packers 6-23. I think we all know the main thing with this game, J.J. McCarthy. I think he had like under 100 yards passing. Just another brutal performance. Hate to say it, but it gets worse by the week with J.J. McCarthy. It legitimately gets worse by the week. The couple of interceptions he had towards the end of the game. And here's the thing with him is, like, towards the end of the game, we've seen it against the Bears. I think last week, the Lions. I think it was against the Bears at the beginning of the season as well. When they ended up winning that game at the beginning of the year, where he rattles off kind of like these last second drives and he looks really good. And it's like, where the hell is that for the first 50 minutes of the game? He's not even really doing that now. Like, when he was trying to kind of get some of that late game magic as he's been getting, which I give him some sort of credit for. I'm trying to give him any amount of credit I can to this point. It isn't even showing up. And the Packers yesterday, it was pretty telling in their game plan, where they were just kicking field goals. Like, you know what? We do not trust J.J. McCarthy to go down there and score touchdowns. Maybe get him in field goal range, but, we don't trust J.J. McCarthy in the red zone. Our defense has been playing fantastic. We've been sacking them all over the field. Like, we do not trust J.J. McCarthy. And they were ultra conservative in their game plan. No Josh Jacobs, and they're still running the ball, and no tomorrow. And I thought Jordan Love, he had a couple of really clutch third down throws, but I didn't even think he played particularly well. He didn't. I mean, his stat sheet is just very kind of below average. And again, I watched the entirety of the game, as I do with all the games, and he didn't blow anyone's socks off or anything. He was just incredibly, maybe below average, like just average at best yesterday. As I mentioned, he had a couple of really clutch third down throws, which were elite throws, risky. Seems like they were floating across his body and across the field for a while, but ended up getting them to be complete at the end of the day, and that's what matters. But I just look up and I look at the Vikings score. I look at McCarthy, and as I mentioned, every week it gets worse. And I think this thing is getting really, really ugly in Minnesota. The fans are just can't tolerate it anymore. Like, you last year were 60 minutes away from being 15-2 and having the number one seed. Mind you, nothing has really changed about the team. About an average offensive line. The offensive line wasn't a brick wall last year. They weren't great, but they managed, and that's kind of what they're doing this year. They don't have a great offensive line, but they have a decent offensive line. Not many teams in this league, if any, have a fantastic offensive line. There's always going to be issues with the offensive line. It's never going to be perfect protection. So that's why he doesn't have one of the worst units in the league, but he holds on to the ball too long. That's why he takes a lot of sacks. And you look at his sacks, and it's like he's just sitting back there forever and forever and forever with the football, patented, just waiting. And I had someone in my comments under my TikTok a few days ago comment the chart between Josh Rosen and J.J. McCarthy, and I compared a lot of McCarthy to Rosen. They show a lot of similarities. A lot of people are like, actually, like, dude, you're making a good point. Others are like, I don't know, I don't really see it. But he showed the quarterback efficiency, which I didn't even look up this chart. I actually meant to add it in my mind, but I forgot to look it up. In 2018, Josh Rosen on the Cardinals, and 2025 McCarthy on the Vikings, they're in the exact same spot. They are literally the exact same quarterback. I can even go to argue, seriously, McCarthy might be worse than Josh Rosen was in 2018, seriously. And if anything, they're on the exact same level. I'm not going to say McCarthy's better than him, because he's struggling to get 100 yards passing the football. And mind you, this is to elite talent. He's throwing to Justin Jefferson, who I say, with a good quarterback, is the best receiver in football. I take him over Jamar Chase. Whichever one you choose, I don't really care. They're both elite. I would take Justin Jefferson over a lot of guys. I know JSN right now is on pace for 2,000 yards and all, but regardless, we all know he's a top 2 receiver when he has a good quarterback and fully healthy, and he's healthy. Jay McCarthy just still can't even get him the football. And Jordan Addison, who's one of the better 2s in the league, Hawkinson, one of the better tight ends. Like, you can't ask for a better situation to be in. And I know people try to say he didn't ask to be thrown in this. He's only played, 6 games or something like that. Like, give him time. Unfortunately for him in the situation he's in, I know he may not have been asked to be in it, but you can't ask to be in much better, to be honest with you. You just can't. And the thing is it's not like, okay, he's starting off, he's not doing great, but he's showing a little bit of an improvement during the games. Like, there's something there. You watch him and you watch the Vikings, there is nothing. It gets worse every week you watch him. So that's where it's like, it's just getting ugly. The fan base, O'Connell looks pissed off. Jefferson just looks sick of it. It's ugly. I just say, do they hold on to McCarthy next year? I just trash it. Maybe just try for Mac Jones, do something. But anything is better. I mean, honestly, you look at him out there, you have backups playing all over the league yesterday, especially Rudolph, Brissett. You have a couple of backup quarterbacks playing yesterday. And Joe Flacco, I watched McCarthy play. He would probably be one of the worst backup quarterbacks in the NFL. We're off. He's by far the worst starting quarterback in the league. Like, we're talking about backups. Like I mentioned, Rudolph, they put up 28 points yesterday. They played okay. Flacco, he had that pretty ugly pick 6 to Marcus Jones, but had their offense moving a little bit. We know how Flacco is. He's all over the place, but gives a team a spark when they need it. And who was the other guy I mentioned? I don't know. I forget the other guy I mentioned now, or Winston's another one too. Went out. They had Wandale Robinson have like a career game yesterday. Like, he's one of the worst backup quarterbacks in the NFL. It is ugly in Minnesota. And I watched, and I thought the Packers played ultra conservative game plan on purpose, because as long as Matt LaFleur and them knew, as long as we don't turn the ball over and put them in scoring position, we just run the time off, make him go, put some pressure on McCarthy to score. We just keep scoring field goals, run time off. McCarthy ain't going to score touchdowns. We know that. And they knew that. And to me, that's pretty telling. That's embarrassing. And Vikings in a bad spot, but the Packers, especially with the Bears on a win streak here, the Lions end up pulling off a really gritty win. They're still only, 7-4 or something like that right now. The Packers stay in the mix, and that's what they needed, because the Packers lost yesterday, which, they were way in that game anyway. And it wasn't like it was ever close. But you look at the Bears, you look at the Lions, it's like, shit, we could be out of here for the running. Now, the Bears do have a tough stretch coming up, but the Packers need to keep picking up these big wins, and that's what they did yesterday. Steelers, Bears, 28-31 yesterday. A game, I actually took the Pittsburgh Steelers to win this game, especially when I was watching. Caleb Williams struggles to get to 60% completion percentage. I think he's in 7 games this year where he's been under a 60% completion percentage. And I've come to this realization with Caleb, and that is, we know he's a big play QB. We know he is incredibly athletic, rocket up an arm, moves well. We know the ceiling is just, we know his athletic ability is just through the roof. Very high ceiling there for Caleb, but he doesn't throw a lot of picks. I said this with him at USC as well. He doesn't throw a lot of interceptions, but he has a lot of big play potential. But the thing is he's not going to complete a lot of passes. Now, he struggles to get to 60% completion percentage, but he does throw a lot of touchdowns, doesn't throw a lot of picks. I still feel kind of weird with the whole Caleb and Ben Johnson connection. I still feel like if Ben Johnson could choose another quarterback, which, there's a decent bit of quarterbacks that are better than Caleb. I think he's a fringe top 10 quarterback right now at best. Obviously, there's some guys he'd choose him over, but guys you may not think, maybe like Jared Goff or something, which was his guy, that kind of fits, his role better in terms of just sit back there, take the little chunk plays at a time, more Ben Johnson style. Still feels like a weird fit between Caleb and Ben Johnson, but it's working. Maybe it's not the prettiest. They pulled off some pretty ugly wins, but overall, a win is a win. You're never going to be able to just pull off every win you get during the season, whether you get 10, 11, 4, whatever, however many wins are going to be pretty wins. A win's a win regardless. They're all in the same column. And to me, it's pretty special, especially against Pittsburgh, which I thought if they had Aaron Rodgers, I think if they did have Aaron Rodgers, I think Pittsburgh probably wins that game. But I thought Rudolph actually played a good game. And the Bears defense was missing a lot of starters. And the reason why, too, I think Aaron Rodgers, if he was playing, Aaron Rodgers' track record against the Bears is pretty good. I know he's not what he was on Green Bay for all those years, playing against them twice a year, but he knows the Bears inside and out. I just thought, his track record against the Bears and the Steelers as a 1 o'clock team is pretty. They're a completely different team than they are when they play on primetime. They're 0-3 on primetime and just get ass blasted on primetime. They're not even remotely the same team, against the Chargers, or was it the Packers, a few weeks ago and everything. They're just not even competitive on primetime. But Caleb doesn't throw a lot of picks, which, I always say turnovers is the main killer in the NFL. If you can not turn the ball over, no matter what, whether or not you throw 4 touchdowns, no touchdowns, 1 touchdown, you should be able to stay competitive within the game, because you can always go back and look during the game of who has more turnovers, and usually whoever has more turnovers, no matter how much better their stat line looks, they're going to usually win the game. The team who doesn't have as many turnovers is going to win the game there. So, and I just thought the Bears yesterday, big spot for them. They have a pretty big game coming up this week, I think. Yeah, against the Eagles on Black Friday. That's going to be a big game for both teams. We're talking number 1 seed here, potential for both of these teams. The Eagles, I know the Rams are on a heater, the Seahawks. If you would have told me through 12 weeks the Bears would be a number 1 seed contention, I would have just said you're crazy. I would have said maybe this team's competing for the 7 seed. But the 1 seed is pretty crazy. So this is a big game coming up here on Friday. They end up pulling a really gritty win against the Steelers. TJ Watt, I will say, kind of felt like a Colts situation from a few weeks ago to where, when they started strip sacking Daniel Jones and making him fumble and turn the ball over all over the place. When that happened yesterday with Caleb Williams, when he had that strip sack in the end zone, ended up being a touchdown for Pittsburgh. I was like, this is where the Colts were at a couple weeks ago. And the Steelers started running up the score and get some real pressure on Caleb, and Caleb would get flustered. And I give Caleb a lot of credit because that didn't end up happening to him, where I thought that would be where the game turned and why it took Pittsburgh. Caleb ended up having a level head, stayed clear, stayed true, and pulling off some pretty clutch drives and scoring some touchdowns and not turning the ball over. Even though still struggling to kind of get 60% of his completions, which I just think is going to be something he's going to be doing his whole career. I don't think he's ever going to be a guy who completes 75% of his passes and just goes on to be, throw 20 for 28, couple touchdowns, no picks. Like, he's not going to be like that, but he's going to throw 3 touchdowns, no picks, and barely 60%. I mean, I've come to that realization with Caleb, and still, as long as he doesn't turn the ball over, the Bears are going to be pretty force going forward. They have a lot of good players on that team. They invested in the O-line. Again, the receiving crew, I see one of the better ones in the NFL. Definitely a massive upgraded coach, and it's showing right now for the Bears. And big time win there yesterday against the Steelers. And for the Steelers, man, now they're not even in first place in their division. I think they're actually in the hunt. I don't even think they're in the playoffs anymore now. Ravens getting competitive. This is going to be like a last week thing for Pittsburgh and Baltimore. Like, it's going to come down to the wire. The last game of the year, which I actually think they play each other in, going to be like the game of the year, I think, to be honest with you. It's going to be a really intense game. And I think, is it in Pittsburgh? I actually believe it is in Pittsburgh, the last game of the year. So that's going to be huge there. And Pittsburgh, they got to start pulling off more wins. That's what I thought they'd win yesterday. I know they're only 6-5, but I just, I think with Baltimore coming up, they got to get Aaron Rodgers back and sooner than later. Browns, Raiders, 24-10. I know it's not necessarily one of the more highlighted games of the day, one of the more profound games of the day. Look at both the teams' records, and they're just kind of one of the bottom-tier teams in the NFL. But I just kind of want to talk about Shedeur Sanders' start. As I'm recording later today on Monday here, they did announce, Kevin Stefanski announced Shedeur Sanders is going to be the starter going forward here against the 49ers next week. Look, the Browns, I got to say one thing. Dylan Gabriel was not a big play potential kind of quarterback. And that throw Shedeur Sanders had down the stretch, or that was towards the beginning of the game, he was like a 50-yard bomb to Isaiah Bond. With the second I see that throw, I'm like, there's no doubt Shedeur Sanders should be the starter because Dylan Gabriel just does not bring you that. Now, I will say one thing Dylan Gabriel probably looks better with, and I think it'll come in time for Shedeur Sanders, is he just looks more comfortable. I think Shedeur in the pocket doesn't really stand, kind of all over the place, little flustered, but I think that just comes with getting more comfortable in time. Mind you, he's had like no first-team practice reps. He said 1 week of first-team practice reps, comes out here, gets their first win since I think like October 19th. It's been over a month since the Browns have had a win. Defense looked pumped, team looked pumped. Look, people can call him cocky, they can call him this and that, immature, which I'm not denying. But he's coming into the draft, definitely immature, had kind of some maturity issues. But me being 21 years old and being 22 here in a few weeks, trust me, I get it. That just comes in time. It does. You can't necessarily expect this guy to be as poised as like Flacco's 4 years old with a family, on the team earlier in the year. But I think Cleveland now going forward has some sort of hope. They've been looking for that. With Gabriel, you never really felt like he was going to be the guy going forward. At least with Sanders, they did end up pulling off the win. I know the Raiders just suck. They have literally no life. They ended up firing Chip Kelly this morning, which I mentioned last week. Chip Kelly's next on that firing list for the Raiders. You look at Pete Carroll's resume in terms of firing offensive coordinators and personnel. Chip Kelly was a dead man walking. It actually turned out to be sooner than later, which is crazy. But big win for Shedeur yesterday, man. Big confidence. His post-game interviews were great. A lot of Browns fans like his quotes. Gives him some momentum going forward. So I like it. I do. I think the Browns, for the first time in a while, feel like they have some sort of open quarterback. Not saying he's the guaranteed answer or anything like that, or he's going to be the guy going forward. But as of now, week 12 going into week 13 next week, they definitely feel like they have some going for him here, at the quarterback position. Eagles-Cowboys 21-24. Did not have this on my bingo card with the Cowboys coming back in this game. Look, when at halftime, I kind of thought this game would be, I thought I think it was, 21-7 at halftime. Cowboys, I figured they might end up losing this game 31-14, 31-20, 21 or something like that. But Saquon a fumble, a couple fumbles from other guys as well. Again, as I mentioned earlier, with the turnover battles with teams, that's what's mainly important with teams is the turnover battle. And the Cowboys, man, how good does Pickens look? I think one of the more underrated trades of the year was just the George Pickens thing. Jerry Jones took a lot of shit for that. And I think with him, Pickens kind of overtaken CeeDee Lamb. Like, CeeDee Lamb has had a lot of drops this year. Just over the last couple of weeks, like, Pickens is better than CeeDee Lamb right now. He just is. That's a pretty good 1-2 punch right there. And Pickens really coming through, making some big catches for them yesterday. CeeDee had a big catch as well down the sideline. When Dak looks comfortable, and he's definitely comfortable against the Eagles in his career, that's a team to look out for. And the Cowboys are back in the mix. I think one guy who has made a difference with him coming back is Overshown, DeMarvion Overshown, or however you pronounce his first name. But I think he's made a difference coming back. He had a pretty ugly injury last year. I think he tore his ACL, MCL, and PCL, I think. How terrible is that? Usually when guys come from that, I don't care how young you are, that's a tough injury to overcome, man. That's a lot of hurt to your leg and your knee and shit. That's pretty bad. But yeah, Eagles, Cowboys. I will say for the Eagles is they were just rolling with A.J. Brown at the beginning of the game. I thought they'd end up keeping that going. Something's just off with the Eagles. I don't know what it is. They're just not consistent. I'm telling you, they get one half of really good football, and the other half, they just collapse. It's been every game this year. You look at Philly, they have a good half, and the other half is just not very good at all. And I don't understand. I don't know if it's Kevin Batula's play calling. They come out of the half or whatever it is, just feeling like, we kind of got this game won. You don't really know if they feel like they know how to call a game plan when they're up or whatever it is. They just collapse. So I think the Eagles do have some worries there because this has been a consistent theme all year. It hasn't really worked its way out. Definitely some worry there with that. And Dallas, I'll say, man, I've predicted, I said, they're going to have a roller coaster year all year. They just are. They're going to look great one game. Like, against the Broncos about a couple weeks ago, they looked atrocious. They had Joe Milton come in like the third quarter or something like that at the beginning of the fourth. They weren't even competitive. And then they just go out, they play some teams, they just look incredible. It depends on their offense. And I think one thing that's made a really big change with this team is that Quinnen Williams trade. Their defense is sparked. They've looked really good. It's contributed to their offense being able to go out there and actually just play at their speed instead of forcing passes over and over again down the field, forcing turnovers for Dak. So definitely feels like there's some sort of balance now with the Cowboys. So, and I kind of made a funny comparison yesterday during the Cowboys game. I was like, some of the Cowboys that's interesting is like they've been the exact same team the last 20 years or so. When they had Romo, they're paying Romo a bunch of money, Dez Bryant a bunch of money. They're kind of the same now with Dak and CD. They have a lot of just a couple of expensive, really expensive players, and then the rest of the team around them is just average and below average at best. Kind of feels the same. Like, you just look back then with Romo and Dez. They can say that with Dak and CD. It just feels like they complete the same cycle over and over again with these teams. I think it's funny. But I think the Cowboys, big win for them. They're right in the mix. I don't think they're going to win the NFC East. I think that the Eagles are just too talented and are going to keep squeezing out games regardless of how good they're playing. But Cowboys are right in the mix there. Panthers, 49ers on Monday Night Football tonight. Just wanted to touch up on this game, give you guys some of my predictions for that. I went with the dog on Thursday night. I've been going with dogs all year on primetime. I'm taking the Panthers to win this game again. over the 49ers. I'm going to take them to win 30-28, or I'm going to take them to win 31-28 over the San Francisco 49ers tonight. McMillan, the offense has been moving. The San Francisco 49ers defense is just so injury prone. They generate no pass rush. McMillan and Bryce Young have really generated a serious connection. McMillan gets better by the week. Again, Bryce coming off one of the better performances, probably the best performance of his career. And the 49ers getting Purdy back. But after a win, the 49ers have been terrible all year after they get a win. They're win one, lose one, win one, lose one, like all year. So that's a real stat. So that's something to look out for. I'm taking the Panthers as a dog tonight, 31-28 over the 49ers to win on Monday Night Football. And that is it for today's video. Top 10 Tuesday tomorrow. I hope you guys enjoyed the video today. And I'll see you guys tomorrow. Take it easy.